Let's go in a different direction for a bit and see where it takes us. Now, in Buddhism, ego is used as a translation of the Pali word atta, although the Buddha never provided a clear and unambiguous definition of atta. I might suggest that self or essence is a workable translation of atta. Buddhism pairs and contrasts atta with anatta, not self. Interestingly enough, one of the contemporary translations of the Turkish word bensizlik that we mentioned earlier is anatta. It is written, "What is anatta, that is not my atta?" In other words, what is not self, that is, what is not my self? In Majjhima Nikaya, Gautama Buddha was asked by a layperson to expound on the concept of anatta. The Buddha answered this way: "The body, O monks, is not anatta. Sensation is not anatta. Perception is not anatta. Mental constructions are not anatta, and neither is consciousness anatta. Understanding this, O monks, the disciple sets no value on the body or on sensation or on perception or on mental constructions or on consciousness. Setting no value on them, he becomes free of passions and he is liberated." Believing in atta was considered a false belief, a mental projection, and that through the doctrine of anatta, the Buddha was denying atta. So to translate atta as soul is an error because Buddhism denies the existence of an eternal metaphysical entity which others have called soul. Anatta is the breaking free of the enslavement of the false self, that self which we have created that is not truly our authentic self. Anatta is to be selfless. Anatta is the denial of atta. Modern Buddhist scholar, the Venerable Walpola Sri Rahula of Sri Lanka wrote, "According to the Buddhist teachings, it is wrong to hold the opinion, I have no self, which is the annihilations theory, as is to hold the opinion of I have self, which is the eternalized theory, because both are fetters, both arising from the false idea, I am. The correct position with regard to the question of anatta is not to take hold of any opinions or views, but to try to see things objectively as they are without mental projections, to see that what we call I or being is only a combination of physical and mental aggregates which are working together independently in a flux of momentary change within the law of cause and effect, and that there is nothing permanent, everlasting, unchanging, and eternal in the whole existence." The Buddha said in the Pali Canon, "Upadi dukhasa mulani," that is, attachment is the root of suffering. In order to remove suffering from our lives, we need to make our work to detach our inside from that which is outside of ourselves, that is, to detach from the material and the physical. Our work is to also detach from the desires of the self, that is, our selfishness and self-centeredness for the material and the physical. Upadana, the word for attachment or clinging or grasping, and is often seen as being the result of tanha, which is the Pali word that is derived from Sanskrit for thirst or desire or craving. I want, I need, I desire, and if I don't get what I want, the I suffers and I suffer. Now, because of the line of thinking I'm presenting, I feel I must take a moment and share two short teaching stories that Dr. Robert Frager passes on to us in his book, Love is the Wine, talks of a Sufi master in America. Dr. Frager is also known as Sheikh Raghib al-Jarahi. He was one of the Khalifas of the now passed away Sheikh Muzaffar Ozak Effendi. The first story goes like this. Hazreti Isa gave up the world. He divorced this world completely. Finally, all that Hazreti Isa possessed were two items: his comb, which he used to comb his beard, and his cup, which he used to drink water. Then, one day, he saw an old man combing his beard with his fingers. So, Hazreti Isa threw away his comb. Then, he saw another man who was drinking water from his cupped hands. So, he threw away his cup. Then the second story. Ibn Arabi, may his soul be sanctified, considered the greatest sheikh in Sufism, met a devout and ascetic fisherman in his travels in Tunisia. The fisherman lived in a mud hut, and every day he took his boat out to fish, and he would distribute all he caught to the poor, except for a single fish head, which he boiled for his own meager dinner. The fisherman eventually became Ibn Arabi's student. He became Ibn Arabi's dervish, and after much work, became a sheikh himself. Well, the story goes on that when one of the fisherman's dervishes was about to leave on a trip to Spain, the fisherman sheikh asked his student to visit his own sheikh, Ibn Arabi, and asked him to send him some spiritual guidance, because the fisherman felt he had not been making any spiritual progress for many years. The dervish said, "Eyvallah, of course," and went on the long journey. Well, when this dervish came to Ibn Arabi's hometown, he asked where he could find the great Sufi sheikh. The townspeople pointed out a palatial mansion on top of the hill and told him that was the sheikh's home. The dervish was shocked at how worldly Ibn Arabi must be, especially compared to his own beloved, simple fisherman sheikh. Reluctantly, he made his way to the mansion, and on the way, he passed cultivated fields, beautiful orchards, and herds of sheep, goats, and cattle, and each time he asked, he was told that the fields, the orchards, and the animals all belonged to Ibn Arabi. The dervish asked himself, how could such a materialist be such a great Sufi sheikh? When he reached the mansion, the dervish's worst fears were confirmed. Here was wealth and luxury beyond his wildest dreams. The walls were made of inlaid marble. The floors were covered with priceless carpets. The servants wore silk. Their clothing was finer than that of all the wealthiest men and women of the dervish's home village. He asked for Ibn Arabi and was told the master was visiting the Caliph and would be back shortly. And after a short wait, he saw a procession coming toward the house. First came an honor guard of the Caliph's soldiers, with brightly shining armor and weapons, mounted on beautiful Arabian horses. Then came Ibn Arabi, dressed in magnificent silk robes and a turban fit for a sultan. Well, when the dervish was brought to see Ibn Arabi, beautiful serving girls and handsome serving boys brought them coffee and cakes. Now the dervish relayed his sheikh's message. He was shocked and indignant when Ibn Arabi told him, "Tell your master his problem is that he is too attached to the world." When the dervish returned home, his own sheikh now asked eagerly if he had met the great sheikh, his own sheikh, Ibn Arabi. Reluctantly, the dervish admitted that he had. "Well, did he give you any advice for me?" The dervish tried to avoid repeating Ibn Arabi's remarks. They were so incongruous considering Ibn Arabi's opulence and his own sheikh's asceticism and simple living. Besides, his sheikh might be offended at him for repeating such things. The fisherman sheikh insisted, and finally the dervish told him what Ibn Arabi had said. The fisherman broke into tears. His amazed dervish asked, how could Ibn Arabi, living in such luxury, dare to tell him he was too attached to the world? He is right, the fisherman said. He really cares nothing for all that he has. But every night, when I have my fish head for supper, I wish it were a whole fish. Mansur al-Hallaj, a Persian mystic and poet who lived in the late 9th century, was killed because in a moment of ecstasy, he realized he had given up his ego and had for a moment merged with the divine. He had touched the divine. He had tasted the divine. And in that moment of realization, he said, Anal Haq, that is, I am the truth. I am reality. And in fact, Al-Haq is the name of God. So people heard him say, I am God. And for that, he was martyred. The Pharaoh of the Quran and the Bible also said, I am God. But this same statement came from a place of arrogance and self-centeredness, where Mansur al-Hallaj's did not. Here's how Hazrat Maulana says it in the 2nd volume of his Masnavi. Bud anal haq dar labe Mansur nur, bud anallah dar labe Fir'aun zur. Anal haq on the lips of Mansur was the light, was the nur. An Allah on the lips of Fir'aun, on the lips of Pharaoh, was the lie. And he also writes in the 5th volume of his Masnavi, Goft Pharaoni an al-Haq gasht past, Goft Mansuri an al-Haq o berast. On anara la'natullah dar aqab, Vin anara rahmatullah a moheb. A Pharaoh said, an al-Haq, and was laid low. A Mansur said, an al-Haq, and was saved. That I of Pharaoh had the curse of Allah in the end. Now, in the end is dar aqab. It could also mean in his descendants. And this I of Mansur had the compassion of Allah, O Moheb, O lover. Our work is also to detach from the false image of self that our ego has constructed over the years in order to create its identity, an identity, if you will allow me, that it presents to the world. British philosopher and writer Alan Watts, in his 1966 book entitled The Book on the Taboo Against Knowing Who You Are, wrote, "We suffer from a hallucination, from a false and distorted sensation of our own existence as living organisms. Most of us have the sensation that I myself is a separate center of feeling and action, living inside and bounded by the physical body, a center which confronts an external world of people and things, making contact through the senses with a universe both alien and strange. Everyday figures of speech reflect this illusion. I came into this world. You must face reality, the conquest of nature. This feeling of being lonely and also being very temporary visitors in the universe is in flat contradiction to everything known about man and all other living organisms in the sciences. We do not come into this world. We come out of it as leaves from a tree. As the ocean waves, the universe peoples. Every individual is an expression of the whole realm of nature, a unique action of the total universe. This fact is rarely, if ever, experienced by most individuals. Even those who know it to be true in theory do not sense or feel it, but continue to be aware of themselves as isolated egos inside bags of skin. So where does all of this leave us? Is the ego, the self, the nafs, an asset or a liability? Is it a gift or an affliction? Is it me or not me? And the answer would be yes. The ego, the self, the nafs, whatever word you use, whatever term, all define who we are. And no matter how we might label it, it also prevents us at the same time from becoming who we really are, or can be, or are meant to be. You see, we create a picture of ourself from how I relate to that which is outside of me and how that relationship is reflected back to me. What do others think of me? What do others have? What do others look like? We also create the picture of ourself from how I relate to that which is inside of me and how I perceive, hide, and project that self-image which I have. How do I relate to nature, to the world, or to the universe? How does my I relate to myself? That is, how do I stand outside of myself and observe myself? Then, when we compare ourself to other people and things, we create a puzzle of ourself, which is more often than not faulty and distorted, because all of that which is outside of me is not me, and often that which I perceive inside of me is also not me. I compare my insides with other people's outsides, and my picture is not accurate of who I am. So, if you accept the argument that the ego is merely a construct or a mind state, well, then there is no ego. But if you accept the argument that the ego is the nafs, then there is work to be done to harness it and to train it and to elevate it. I'll speak more directly to this in another video, inshallah. So we've covered lots of territory in this video. So let's gather it all together this way. I like referring to recovery. And in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, it says, selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our troubles. And a little later it says, so our troubles we think are basically of our own making. They arise out of ourselves. They arise out of our insides. They arise out of our nafs. And Hazreti Maulana writes in his Divani Shams in Ghazal number 3020, he begins saying, Pishtara, Pishtar, come closer, closer. How long this highway robbery? Since you are me and I am you, how long this you-ness and me-ness? We are God's light and glass, and so much quarreling with ourselves. Because of what is such a light running from another light? We are all one, perfect. Because of what are we cross-eyed? Why do the wealthy look toward the poor with contempt? Come on, get up from this me-ness. Mix with everyone. With your own self, you are just a seed. With everyone, you are like a mine. And Hazrati Maulana also writes in his Fihi Mafi, if you find fault in your brother or sister, the fault you see in them is within yourself. The true Sufi is like a mirror where you see your own image, for the believer is a mirror of their fellow believers. Get rid of those faults in yourself, because what bothers you in them bothers you in yourself. An elephant was led to a well to drink. Seeing itself in the water, it shied away. It thought it was shying away from another elephant. It did not realize it was shying away from its own self. So, why can we not see ourselves clearly? Because our mirror is not sparkling. Why is it not sparkling? Why is our mirror not shining or glistening with clarity? And again, Hazreti Maulana writes, Zonk zengar az rohash momtaz nist. Because the rust is not separated from its surface. And so you have to ask, how do we scrape off the rust and then polish our mirror so that we might see ourselves clearly? La ilaha illallah. There is no God but God. There is no God but Allah. In the way of tasawwuf, in the way of Sufism, we understand that hearts become rusty just like copper and silver coins become rusty. And this polish for this rust is zikrullah, and it will polish the heart like a shining mirror. When one stops zikr, the rust returns. But when the zikr resumes, the polishing of the heart begins again. May we always keep cleaning the mirror of our heart. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah.